Welcome to AlexGs Aquarium, everybody. Today I want to give an update on the build, focusing on the aquarium canopy, as this is an incredibly important part of this build. I think it's important to talk a bit about why I made the design choice I did with this particular canopy, as it's something I've never done before. Talk a little bit about the construction of this aquarium canopy, and finally touch on the function this canopy is going to serve for this aquarium system, because it's incredibly important. Aquarium canopies really come in all shapes, sizes, and styles. There's really no limit to them, from traditional ones that sit on top of aquariums to being suspended from the ceiling, or even ones that are integrated into walls. In my case, I decided to do something completely different that I've never done before, and I have built what I am calling a freestanding canopy. I'm calling it that because it is a freestanding structure that's independent of the aquarium. All the load bearing is going to be through its own structure and not on the aquarium at all. And I think it's really important to talk about why I made this design choice. It was not simply just an idea I wanted to try. I had a lot of requirements, restrictions, and also the method that I chose to build this canopy in that all kind of led me to this decision to build a freestanding canopy. When I undertook the planning of this build, I knew it was going to be big. I knew that there was going to be a lot of complex parts I had to all build together. And I also looked at requirements. Big aquarium, big canopy. The very first requirement I had for my canopy was I wanted it tall as I could make it. In my last aquarium system, I had it integrated into the ceiling, and I loved it. I wanted that same thing back in this new display. There was just one problem though. I promised my wife that I would not touch the ceiling of our finished basement in our brand new house. So I wanted to get the canopy as tall as I could, but I couldn't touch the ceiling. That pretty much eliminated the possibility of mounting it to the ceiling or integrating it there. And because there's lighting and ventilation and everything in this ceiling, I've also decided to leave a little gap for air circulation. And also I needed to make sure that I could do some kind of maintenance if something ever happened above the aquarium. That's what kind of led me on saying the canopy is going to be this height, just a few inches shy of the ceiling. But how to get it there? That's when I started thinking, well, then I could go a more traditional route and make a canopy that sits on top of the tank, but there were a couple of problems going that route for me. The first one was a bit of an unknown because this canopy weighs a lot already. It weighs several hundred pounds with just the structure here, and it's got a lot more stuff that it's going to have to hold when the system goes online. And if I was going to integrate it into the aquarium just like a canopy that sits on top of the tank, I had some concerns about whether or not the glass structure here would be able to hold that without significant reinforcement. And that was something of major concern. Could it be done? I'm sure there's a way to do it. But with this aquarium holding back 4,200 gallons of water, and I don't want to take away from the safety factor of my aquarium by stacking a bunch of weight on it. The other concern too with the weight of the canopy is it's going to be an uneven weight load. For instance, the fish only section that's going to be here is going to have very basic lighting and just flow pumps. But when you talk about this area, which is going to be SPS, there's going to be much more lighting and flow pumps and more equipment, so the weight of this section of the canopy is going to be heavier than that. And that was a major concern too, because I don't want to overstress any seals or anything in the aquarium structure itself. So that was a major concern. But the final reason that I decided to do the freestanding canopy came down to my method of construction. When I started planning this aquarium, one thing that I thought of early on and said, this is a great idea, is that the glass that's going to go on the sides of this whole tank will be the very last piece that gets installed. I want to build this entire tank stand, canopy, everything that goes inside of it, except the glass. And I've got a lot of reasons for that. I'll have another video on it, but it came down to just that method. And if I would have built an integrated canopy on top of the tank, it would have really jeopardized my construction method for this aquarium. When I started building the canopy itself, the construction method had one requirement, and that is I needed to be able to build this whole thing by myself without any help from anyone. 95% of the work I do on this aquarium build is by myself. I'm a one-man army when it comes to this. I very rarely ask my wife to help me. I very rarely ask friends to come over to help me, in part because it's just not going to be convenient for them, and it's not going to be convenient for me because I work on this tank when I have time. That's what kind of led me into this construction method. Now, the entire aquarium canopy here is held up by these columns, and these columns here are 3.5 inch by 3.5 inch columns. They're two 2x4s with a piece of 1/2 inch plywood sandwiched in the middle. It's been liquid nails and screwed together to make a really strong column. They should be capable of holding at least 1,200 pounds a piece, and they're not going to get anywhere near that. I notched them out with a table saw on top to put some notches, 3.5 inch and 1.5 inch on there. That was done so that when the spans go on top, I could make interlocking joints. The bottom of these columns are attached to the stand with threaded rods. Now, there's no load-bearing capacity here. That attachment point is simply to keep them stabilized and keep them nice and level and plumb with the rest of this system. So as I built these columns out, I then moved on to making my spans. I used 2x6s for the long spans, which are anywhere from 11 to 13 feet long, depending on what section of the tank you're looking at. And it just varies because of overhangs that are on certain areas and not others. Now, when I got the 2x6 spans in, I went ahead and I used a Japanese handsaw to notch them out to fit on the top of all the columns. I also used 2x4s to do the short spans on the side. Once I had all the basic framing up, I went ahead and I notched all the 2x6s out to accommodate my cross bracing in here. Wanted to make sure that as the structure got fit together, everything would interlock a bit, so I didn't have to worry about measuring things out and things slipping while they were getting attached. So these 1/2 inch, these 1/4 inch notches on either side helped fit these cross braces in. And the cross braces are made of 2x4s and 1x4s to form a T-beam that was screwed and glued together. That T-beam offers a lot of extra stability as far as the structure goes. While the 2x4 can handle the vertical pull downward, I was concerned that over time there's always that potential that things could try to warp sideways. By making it into a T-beam, it pretty much eliminates that possibility. It also allowed me to kind of make a frame inside each one of these. I also glued 1x4s onto the top of the 2x6s. That makes a frame inside each section here, which is where I'll eventually attach waterproof panels. Now, one thing I will say, when you build a large canopy structure like this, or any structure like this with rough lumber, there's something to remember, and that is there is no such thing as a perfectly straight board. They're going to have warps, they're going to have twists, that stuff happens. The columns all turned out pretty good. A couple of them had a little twisting or a slight warp to them, nothing that's a major concern. But it's just what happens. The same thing could be said for the long spans and the 2x4 T-beams. But this is my one tip I'll give everybody. If you, as I said, knowing that the wood's never perfectly straight, when you're cutting the boards to a structure like this, you don't want to just use a tape measure and measure each one individually. What you need to do is mathematically figure out how long that board should be. And when you know how long it's supposed to be, you cut it to that length. And as you'll see in the video I'm showing here, the wood does not always cooperate when it's time for assembly. Every one of these sections, the boards, the warps or twists or everything in them was kind of coming out. I actually had to take a ratchet strap in each section and pull the 2x6s together. And same thing on the T-beams. A lot of them, when I pulled the warps out of the 2x4s, they induced a bit of a twist in there. Well, just use a clamp as a lever to snap them into the grooves, and then everything got screwed together. So as it all interlocked, it made a wonderfully strong structure. But just a little tip there on construction with wood like this is that you gotta expect it's gonna have some movement in it, and that's why you always want to cut to the mathematical measurement and not just what the measuring tape says. So these blocks that are here on top of the columns are that safety net for me. So they're just 6-inch 2x4 blocks screwed in around each side where there's overlap. And that just gives me peace of mind, so I don't have to worry about something falling down one day or hanging there. With this structure all done, I've got to do some final adjustments on the threaded rods at the base to make sure everything's lined up the way that it should be. And then I'm on to the next part of this build, which is going to be the tank bottom, which will be for another video. The final piece of this canopy system I want to talk about is functionality. You might look at this, and considering the water line of the tank is going to be somewhere in this area, there's a lot of extra space here. And this canopy does a lot for this system. It is not just an aesthetic piece of furniture as some aquarium canopies are intended to be used. A lot of times it's just about hiding the lights, hiding the equipment, preventing light spill in a room, and that's great. But when you get to aquariums of this size, and even the other ones I have in the fish room, having this much open water, which in this aquarium, it's over 200 square feet of open water here at present. I might even cover some of it. But when you have that much open water with high amounts of water flow, you're going to generate a lot of humidity. And if you do not contain that, mitigate it, and control it, it will destroy your home. I cannot emphasize enough, the main function of this canopy is humidity control. It's great that it's going to hold all my equipment, but the primary function of this canopy for me is to make sure the humidity generated by this mass of water stays in here and either goes to my dehumidifier, maybe gets vented outside, but it doesn't come into my house and start absorbing into the carpet, the walls, the furniture, and everything else, because if I did allow that to happen, it would turn this place into a mold factory in no time. So I've made a lot of videos on humidity control, and I'll make more for this system. But again, the primary purpose of this canopy is all about humidity control. Now it'll be light racks, equipment racks, power, plumbing, waterproofing, and there'll be doors on everything, obviously, too, to give it a nice finished look. It's not going to stay as rough pine forever, but it's the basic structure I need down here in order to move on to the next step of this build. That's what I wanted to cover in the video today. I hope you enjoyed it, got some information out of it. As always, if you have comments or questions, please go ahead, leave them down below in the comments. If you like the video, go ahead and give it that thumbs up. And if you want to see more, go ahead, hit that subscribe button. I don't put out videos that often, but I try to catch all the major steps going on with the aquarium build or the system that's running now. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and I'll see you on the next video.